topics and opinions expressed in the following show are solely those of the hosts and their guests and not those of W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4CY Radio or its employees or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4CY Radio.
Well, hello and welcome. This is Bill Martinez, and we are live. We're going to be talking about the spiritual price of political silence. In her new book, The Spiritual Price of Political Science, Christy Stutzman, author, speaker, a former Republican state Indiana representative, offers practical steps that every concerned American, regardless of their political experience, can take to become politically active and engaged in the political process, and to do so effectively. You will also gain clarity on American history as the book serves as a refresher course on not only the role the Judeo Christian faith played in the nation's founding and development, but on citizens' rights and responsibility. Christy Stutzman, welcome to the show. Good to have you with us.
It's so great to be with you, Bill. Thank you for having me.
Well, Christy, you're also a small business owner. What business are you in?
Yes, actually, I'm a former teacher, and then we started a production company. I'm a music teacher and a music composer. And so I write musicals, stage musicals, and we own the Barns at Napanee in Napanee, Indiana. And it's been around for a long, long time. We bought it right before COVID. So we were kind of dealing with all of the repercussions of that. But we've made it through, and I write and produce stage musicals.
So God told you to buy this facility right before COVID. And so after that, you go, okay, God, you're such a joker. What are you doing to me? Right?
Right. Yes, for sure. It was one of those questioning moments where you're looking at God saying, okay, why? But really,
exactly.
I've always wanted to be part of the conversation and part of the world of performing arts. I truly believe that Christians should be involved in that. People of faith should be involved in that as well. And it's a gift that God's given us. So we decided to start writing original musicals. I'm actually working on my 4th right now, and we're starting to license them across the country and give people good content that's wholesome, uplifting, but also really entertaining and fun.
And the topic matter that you're focusing on in these musicals?
Yeah, so the first one was a musical Christmas Carol. So it's based on Charles Dickens' classic tale. Everybody loves that. The next one was When Calls the Heart. It's a best-selling book by Jeanette Oak. It's been on Hallmark for 10 years as a TV series. It's been a movie, and now it's a musical. And we really were given great response to that. And now I'm working on her next. Well, actually, it's another book series that she wrote, Jeanette Oak, and it's entitled Love Comes Softly. It's been made into a series of movies. So that's what I'm working on right now.
Well, how much fun is that? That's awesome. I love this. And of course, we can use more, wholesome family product like this. Unfortunately, our traditional entertainment outlets have gone woke on us. And, and we have to be careful what we expose our kids to these days. The book, Spiritual Price of Political Silence. What motivated you to write this book?
Well, having been involved in government and politics in different ways over the years. So my husband is a small business owner and owns several small businesses. And after 9/11, we had just had our first child 3 weeks before 9/11 happened. And as a young family and just starting off in business, we really were concerned about the future of our community. And so we just started showing up to meetings to try to be involved and know who was in charge and make sure we were in good hands. And one thing led to another, and he ran for state representative. And so I tried to jump in with both feet and learn as much as I could about the whole process, because I did not study political science in college. And so, I was trying to learn as much as I could from that. But the motivation for the book came from a lot of people coming to us and saying, it's so intimidating. I don't even know where to start. I don't know what to do. How do you even get involved? And it's actually easier than you think. So I wanted to give a a practical handbook to folks of faith and just encourage them to say,
Mhm.
hey, it's easier than you think, and you're needed. You're needed. Your involvement is essential, actually, in America.
Well, that's where we the people come from, right? I mean, those three important words from the Declaration of Independence and our
Right.
Constitution. It really those three words command us to get involved. You say you may not have studied political science, but you lived it, right?
Yes, exactly, and we all do, and as I did my research on this book, I realized that, this is a unique opportunity in the history of the world to be born into a country where your birthright is to not only enjoy freedom, but to also protect it for the next generation, and if we're not
Exactly.
part of the conversation and we're not involved, on any
Mhm.
level, whether it's just helping a campaign or whether it's actually running for office or attending, local school board meetings, whatever
Mhm.
we're doing is actually making a difference. And so it's our birthright, and it's the only way we can survive as a country.
I love that you said it's our birthright. Ronald Reagan said we're just one generation away from losing it all, and we
Yes.
see what's happening today in America on the streets of America. And wow, I mean, for it seems like the last decade or so, Christy, we've been told that we're at that tipping point, but I think we're beyond that tipping point. We're on the downside of it, and that's why things seem to be moving with such rapidity, in my humble opinion.
Yes. Yes, for sure. And that's
Mm.
why I titled the book The Spiritual Price of Political Silence, because I truly believe that we are paying a spiritual price right now. When we look
No doubt.
all
Mhm.
around us, in our culture, in our schools, in our communities, the mindset of people, the vitriol that's out there, the divisiveness, this is all a result of the church saying, well,
Mhm.
it's not our place to be involved, or people of faith being intimidated of speaking out and actually exercising their freedom of speech.
Mhm.
That's all part of the price that we're paying right now. And I truly believe it's all hands on deck right now.
Yeah.
We truly need a renewal, an American renewal, and a spiritual
Mhm.
renewal in our country.
Yeah, but for the spiritual, the spiritual response in the beginning stages of this country, you would never have had the great American idea that we have.
Yes.
Well,
Yes, yes, the
you're
revivals. I mean,
right.
there's a direct correlation between the great revivals that happened and then political action,
Mhm.
throughout history in America. It's amazing to see whether it's, way back in the Revolution, or whether it's, just in recent years, it's
Mhm.
60s and 70s. There
Exactly.
are definitely, movements of God that made a difference.
Well, I love the book because it reinforces the need to go back to what I call first principles. As
Yes.
you know, being a small business owner, you and your husband, is that oftentimes, as we run our businesses, we may lose the way. We may make a wrong turn. Maybe it's an employee who comes in and says, "Hey, I got a great idea. Sounds like a good idea." You take the idea, it doesn't work. And it takes good leadership and management to say, wait a minute, down the road, it could be a year, two, sometimes longer, but you realize you go, wait a minute, we lost momentum. Where did we make a wrong
Right.
turn? And good leadership will
Yeah.
get you to go back and look at that crossroads where you missed the turn and you ended up in the wrong place, right?
Yes, yes, exactly. It's a reassessment of our
Mhm.
direction and figuring out where did we go wrong. That's exactly right. Yeah.
And this is the opportunity that we have today, right now, lest Jesus should tarry. We're here. We're not claiming any dates here, but you look at what's happening not only in America but around the world. And even Dr. Billy Graham, when he was asked about the last days by one reporter, he said, "Are these the last days?" He said, "The last of the last days." He was very quick to respond to that.
Yeah.
So the signs are
Right,
there.
exactly. And we're yeah. Mhm.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, I totally agree. And the
Mhm,
more we see happening around the world, the more evidence we have that we are in the last days. And a lot of people say, well, then I guess we just kind of wait until, he returns.
mhm.
Or a lot of people I've heard, especially regarding politics, say, well, does my vote even count? Does it even matter? And it actually does, especially on the local level. And yes, we need to be, making sure that our elections are secure,
Yes.
that those in leadership are making sure that they are protected, and that every vote is sacred. But boy, when my husband first ran for a state representative position, he won by 249 votes.
Oh, wow.
Every vote counted. In
Exactly.
school board elections and local elections, it really does matter.
Mhm. Now, Christy, let me clear this up, because the information that was given to me was that you were the former Republican state Indiana representative, but it's your husband who is the former Republican state Indiana representative. Is that correct?
Actually, both. Actually, both. So my husband
Oh,
served in the state rep and a state
okay.
senator, and then also in Congress
Mhm.
for 6 years. And then I served as a state representative while he was out of politics and working on business. And so I served for 2 years there.
Uh-huh. Just to have some fun, huh?
Right. Well, I like to call it causers. When you meet
Yeah.
people that believe in a cause, and
Yes.
they're willing to do something that just doesn't seem fun, it's usually because they truly believe in it. And so we're kind of one of those causers. We also believe in the cause of preserving historic preservation of great places around our state. And so we've
Mhm.
been involved in that as well. But yeah, so it's a little crazy, but at the same time, when God calls you to do something, you step forward by faith and do it.
Yeah, exactly. Well, the spiritual price of political silence, the topic of your book. I mean, we look at some voting records, Christy, and let's just talk about the church. Only 50% of church members will even bother to register to vote, and the empirical evidence demonstrates that of that 50%, only 50% of that number will actually go out and vote.
Right.
Uh, it was people of faith that started this country, and
Mhm.
it's people of faith because of the values. I mean, even our former president said that our Constitution was designed for a moral and religious
Right.
people. And over the years and the recent decades, and it's had greater impact since the mid 60s going forward, we've moved into this postmodern Christian environment. And look at our country now. Look at where we are, and we have become, so immoral on so many levels that some have commented that says that if God doesn't judge America, He owes Sodom and Gomorrah an apology.
Yeah. I mean, it has been a long time coming. And the more I did in researching for this book, the more I realized it has been around longer than I ever imagined.
Right.
There has been a concerted effort by cultural Marxists and by academic philosophers who truly believe in humanism, and want to see that implemented into our country. They failed in other places. And those who believe that there's a utopia coming because of their own evolution, when they experiment on a civilization and it fails, it's never their fault. They
Right.
feel like they just didn't do it right. And
Mhm.
targeted America
Mhm.
early on. And they have infiltrated our schools, our universities, our media. They have erased our history. They have twisted facts. They have intimidated people of faith from being involved, all with the goal of making sure that cultural Marxism and humanism is the religion that permeates America. And I think the church was caught unawares.
Mhm.
I believe that there was a division in the church from what I have studied way back, and half of them decided that government was the answer, and they handed over some of the things that the church usually does to the government, and the other half decided, nah, politics was too ugly. And when you look at the founding and you look at the structure of our government, there was never any intention of people of faith removing themselves from the public arena. There
Exactly.
was always reliance on that. And that's why I say it is a birthright.
Mhm.
It is something that comes as a blessing, but also a responsibility. And
Mhm.
we have been led to believe that not only are we not welcome, but that we don't know very much. And there's a story in my book that was just a poignant moment for me, and one of those aha moments where uh, I just kind of connected the dots, and God said, "This is why you need to be involved." And we were talking to a man who was, I believe he was from Lithuania, and
Mm.
it was one of the Eastern Bloc countries that had been part of the USSR under communism. And so he had grown up under communism. And I was very curious. I had heard from missionaries and from people that had gone on mission trips there what it was like. And so I asked him, I said, well, could you go to church? Did you have freedom of choice to choose what church you went to? And he looked at me and just kind of laughed. And he said, well, yeah, of course we did. And I said, oh, you did? Well, that's good to know. I mean, how did that work under communism? And he said, well, we could go to any church we wanted to, as long as we didn't want to go to college. And I said, why couldn't you go to college? He said, well, if you were a person of faith, you weren't scientific. So the government was deciding that if you were a person of faith, you could not be a doctor, you could not be a scientist. And we're seeing that in America today, where I don't think I remember ever in an interview with a person who was a person of faith, who was a scientist, who believes in creation, being interviewed by National Geographic or as an authority on something.
Exactly.
So we're seeing that being implemented, and they're starting to put us in boxes and relegate us to only certain places in society. And if we stop being involved, it's going to get worse.
Well, unfortunately, our First Amendment has been compromised. These institutions that were instituted to protect, our intellect and to advance our creativity and development has been squashed. It has been just like in communist countries. You are told and you are made one way or another compelled to fall lockstep with the party at the time and the political perspective. If not, they've got ways to change you. I mean, we have a noted national political figure that has suggested that the basket of deplorables, those of us of faith and conservative thought, that we should be institutionalized and reprogrammed.
Right.
And the statement was made in public without any pushback whatsoever. And this is what happens with totalitarianism and Marxists, is they first throw it out there. And if the response isn't outrage, then they just keep on pushing further and further until their ambitions are realized. And we're moving in the wrong direction. And it is really a requirement of people of faith, of the church, to come together, for the church to be revived and to, again, re-embrace its reason to exist. Why Jesus went to the cross and why he left us with the church, because he knew that we were going to have these kind of battles, didn't he?
Right. Exactly. He knew it. And, we are armed. And as long as we arm ourselves with the truth, we can be bold and we can be confident that we go into the public arena with the truth. And that's exactly what people are looking for. People are looking, and they're hungry for the truth. I've never seen such a hunger in a generation as I have seen with this new generation, possibly because they have been, taught and almost indoctrinated with false teachings. And that can only satisfy to a certain point. If you give them truth, they're hungry for it. And I have seen signs of renewal and a revival across the country. That's exactly what we need. We have to start changing the culture in our own homes. It starts there. A lot of people think that Hollywood determines culture, and even politics can affect our culture. And, what is this ugliness and vitriol? Well, it's because the church hasn't shown up, hasn't been a part of those conversations. And we actually, as Americans, we the people determine our culture. We determine the culture in our homes and in our churches and in our communities and in our schools. So it has to start with us. But I truly believe there is a renewal happening that we've been praying for a long time. I just pray it's not too late. And I pray that there is enough of a remnant to be strong and bold and to understand what we have to offer and why we have to be there at the table as part of the conversation in a kind way, in a Christian way, with Christ's love and with understanding. But we really need to unify people. It's not about being a social media warrior and having debates with total strangers. It's about talking to our family with kindness and love, asking poignant questions at Thanksgiving. I mean, for the long time, the mantra was, don't talk about, religion and politics,
right, exactly.
It's, but I really think we need to change that. And there's a way to talk about it in love and kindness. And one of the ways that I've found is very effective is just listening first and then
Mhm.
asking questions, but you have to go into it knowing. So that's why I put in my book a refresher course on our Judeo Christian founding, and then
Mhm.
also information on how did the humanist Marxist, how did this culture happen?
Mhm.
There is a history to it. And so I put that in the book so that people could be aware of it. And really, their target is taking down the authoritarian, these are their words, the authoritarian structure of the family unit. That is
Mhm.
enemy number one.
Right.
And we see that being attacked and the foundations crumbling every single day. So if we start in our homes, creating a culture of truth. My great grandfather, great grandmother, actually, 8 times great grandmother, her last
Mhm.
words on her dying bed was, "Be valiant for truth." And if we
Wow.
do that in our
Wow.
homes, it will
Mm.
change the culture.
Wow, what a great warning that many years ago,
Yes.
and this is why the truth is so important. And what the left and the Marxists were able to do was
Yeah.
to get us to move off of absolute truth, to think
Yes.
that truth was relative. Well, look where it's gotten us, right?
Exactly. Yeah, there's no such thing as my truth and your truth.
Mm.
There is only God's truth.
Amen.
And
Yeah.
we can't, we can't succumb to this idea that, well, I don't want to rock the boat. I don't want to, cause any controversy. Well, Christ was controversial, and yet he showed so much love and compassion.
Mhm.
So I think, you're going to have to expect, if you're going to stand for what's right, that if you're going to stand for truth, there is going to be pushback, and people aren't going
Yeah.
to like it. So you're not going to be the most favorite person on the block sometimes. But if you speak it in love, you're
Yes.
planting seeds for the future.
Well, Christy, I got to tell you, in terms of speaking in love, uh, the launch point starts with your assessment of how much God has forgiven you.
Yes.
And when you come into these conversations or these circles with that in mind, it is quite humbling, and it's
Yes.
engaging for others, because sometimes you say, well, you've got to approach this in love. Well, what does that mean? How is that communicated? And I have found through experience that when I remember how much God has forgiven me, boy, you approach these topics and people in a different sort of way. There's no room for legalism. There's no room for
No.
condemnation. You're not looking for a rock to pick up, right?
Right.
You're thankful that God has forgiven you, and if He's forgiven you, this other person that whose sin is probably quite minor by comparison, as Jesus said, "Hey, before you take the splinter out of your buddy's eyes, maybe you ought to take a look at that 2x4 that's sticking out of your eyes," right?
So true. It's so
Right.
true. Yeah. So that's why I think, being a social media warrior and getting in these, arguments with total strangers is just pointless.
Mhm.
It really needs to start in our own hearts,
Right.
realizing what we've been given and how blessed and forgiven we are. And
Mhm.
then out of that should come, the truth and the kindness that we can share with others. And you know the actual playing out of that is really reliant on us knowing. We have
Mm.
to know it first. We have to
Exactly.
experience it first.
Mm.
And that's where I think we've kind of lost our way. Our true history has been hidden, or twisted, changed. And I also believe that we don't want to present such a pretty picture of American history that we deny reality. There
Mhm.
was a lot of ugliness that happened in the growth of our young nation. There were wrongs that were done to people. There were, and in my own family, as I did my own research on my own family, it was
Mhm.
shocking what my family had to go through and what they had to overcome. Why my grandmother wouldn't talk about certain things because she was afraid
Mhm.
socially of
Right.
the repercussions if people knew this or
Mhm.
that. So we have to realize that let's talk about it all, and let's realize that we actually have the answer, and the answer is found in God and His Word.
Exactly. Well, and as you say, is that when we bring it out into the light, then it's out there. And what's happened is that, unfortunately, as you mentioned earlier, you've got these Marxists and communists who have come in, they've stolen our history, they've rewritten things, they've made up stories and narratives with
Yes.
anonymous reporting. It is not a fair assessment of
Right.
where we are, because look at the country, came together with these new documents. It was quite revolutionary. A
Yes.
Declaration of Independence, a constitution, that we would strive for a more perfect union. We
Right.
knew that we were coming in and we had to deal with slavery. Our founding fathers, left that in there so that it would be an encouragement. It would be kind of a bit of a landmark, a lighthouse, so to speak, to move them in a courageous direction to do something about slavery.
Yes.
And and thank God, look what we did. We paid the price of it. How many other nations
Yeah.
on the planet in the history did as much as America did just on that one topic alone, Christy?
Yes, exactly. And it does us it really does us good if we were to look back at history with open eyes and say, okay, what did we overcome? Why were we fighting this? And different issues, whether it's slavery or whether it's, the Trail of Tears or whether
Right.
it's the fight over abortion or just all of those issues that we have had to deal with as a country. There were so many people involved in that discussion, and then eventually sometimes an all-out war about things
Mhm.
like that. And let's talk about it. Let's not hide it. Let's not say it's all hunky-dory. It wasn't a beautiful
Right.
thing. And human nature is going to falter and fail. So we really need to be honest about that and talk about it in a fair way.
Exactly.
Even my own family. I mean, we had people fighting on both sides of the Civil War in the same family, from
Mhm. Yeah.
Kentucky. I
Right.
have pictures of my ancestors, one in gray and one in blue, and they were living out the actual reality of that.
Right.
When you look at that and you say, wow, look how far, we've actually come, look at the sacrifices that were made and the battles that were fought. So where do we go from here? How do
Mhm.
we come together as a nation? And one thing that's been encouraging to me is that when I've gone overseas and I've been on congressional delegation trips where we're representing America to other countries, we have had several people say, this happened on the Mount of Beatitudes. We had our
Mm.
tour guide who said he was not
Yeah,
a person of
I was
faith, and
reading about that.
but he just
I
wanted
love
us
this
to
story.
know.
Yes. Yeah, go ahead.
He
Yeah.
wanted us to know America has done this thing that Jesus said. You have done this. You've been a light to the world, and we're asking you not to stop. I had another gentleman say, we want to do trade with America. We appreciate everything you've stood for. Thank you for what you did in World War II. Just don't export your morals.
Mm.
Wow. What a hard thing to hear. And yet
Right.
at the same time, I realized I understand what he's saying. I
Mhm.
understand. We have to get our own house in order before we can help others.
Yeah, without a doubt. And that story about the tour guide who, it was interesting because when I went to Israel too, that was a little bit of a shock for me, because you're going to the Holy Land and you think, gosh, here you are, you're going where Jesus walked. Everybody here must be religious and spiritual. And
Right.
you saw so much, you go, gosh, in so many
Right.
ways, this is America. It is so secularized. And
Yes.
really, and my heart
Right.
ached for the Holy Land in thinking that, here we are the children of Israel repeating past mistakes. And as you say, even in America, in disrespecting their birthright. And we
Yes.
know from the Bible, what happened when another player disregarded his birthright. God said that it was Esau he hated, Jacob he loved. And it
Right.
was Esau who rejected his birthright. So there's
Mhm.
something rather hollow and sanctified about your birthright. And I
Yes.
think that what you've touched on here, Christy, and people of faith are going to get this. They understand the significance of this, is that we should not take the birthright that we have here as American citizens, as a country that has been blessed by God Almighty Himself. Because I don't care what anybody says. Without God, America doesn't happen.
Yes, it's so true. I mean, so if we take our birthright for granted, similar to what Esau did,
Mhm.
and we enjoy the abundance without understanding the root of the abundance, it will not be there for our
Right.
children. So
Exactly.
if we expect them to enjoy the blessings of freedom like we have, at a certain point,
Mhm.
when we become an adult and we become a contributing member of society,
Mhm.
at a certain point, we have to realize that we have enjoyed the blessings of abundance because of the root of faith. And now it is our turn to take up the role of responsibility and be engaged and involved and ensure that it continues. And part of that is understanding our history, understanding where we came from, what we've come through, and why God has blessed us, and
Mhm.
staying true to that.
Well, we're talking with Christy Stutzman. Her book, The Spiritual Price of Political Silence. Christy is a small business owner, a music composer, a former teacher, and state legislator. Christy, you mentioned abortion, and I want to address this. I mean, after 49 years, the Supreme Court decided to put the issue of abortion back to the 50 states, where even many commentators 49, 50 years ago agreed that's where it should be. But still, it continues to be a lightning rod. And I think that, again, relevant to, political silence is that the church should be able to lead the way here in a very positive manner with compassion and understanding that, probably when you look out over the pews every Sunday morning, pastors are probably seeing about a third. It's been estimated, according to Barna Research, a third of those sitting in the pew have been involved with an abortion. The church doesn't want
Yes.
to talk about it. It has remained silent. I think it's unfortunate because there is healing that needs to take place there for people that have been involved with abortion, and that we need to realign our, our own constitution, our own understanding, and certainly the political perspective of how God sees life. And it's black and white. It's not gray. It's
Right.
either life or it's death, isn't it?
Yes, it is. And, I really like the fact that you pointed to the need for the church to have compassion. When you talk to friends and neighbors, you'll never know how close abortion is in their lives or to you. If you've never experienced it, you
Mhm.
probably know someone who has been touched by it in some way. And so I think it's very, very important as people of faith and believers to be careful in the words we pick, and not being so condemnatory of people who might have been misled or might misunderstand what actually happens when God
Mhm.
gives life. And so there's been a lot of misinformation spread for many, many years. In fact, I'm going to give you a little insight into my age, which is not, I'm not supposed to do that as a woman, but I am as old as the Roe v. Wade decision.
Mhm.
And when it was passed, I could have been aborted. I mean,
Yeah.
at that point, and so my generation grew up never knowing any other situation other than it being legal.
Mhm.
The fact that it is now been overturned and has been sent back to the states is a huge win. But at the same time, we also have to be aware that the fight will never be over until all hearts are reached with the truth about abortion,
Mhm.
about scripture, about their freedom in Christ. And a lot of church members were misled as well. And so
Right.
we really have some education to do, some love and reaching out to people on an issue that is very, very hard for a lot of people to talk about. And so there's been a divide in the pro-life movement, and it's broken my heart to see that. Some people have come in and said, end it now, and there's repercussions for everybody involved, and send them all to jail. And I don't adhere to that mentality at all. I
Mhm.
truly believe that there's been misunderstanding and misleading of people, miseducation about the whole issue. And we really have to start there. And the science
Exactly.
is with us.
Mhm.
That's what's so wonderful, is that the
Right.
science backs up life. And
Mhm.
that's just a wonderful thing to be able to realize and to study.
Yeah, I agree. Put the stones down. We need to put the stones
Yes.
down. Nobody needs to get clobbered here. Uh, we were lied to. The Supreme
Yeah.
Court, the movement, Planned Parenthood, the eugenicists, Margaret Sanger, all those. This was the system was rigged, and it
Yes.
was rigged against the truth.
Right.
And so, a culture bought into this. We
Mhm.
killed over 1 million babies,
Yeah.
over 100 million babies. I'm sorry, in the 49-year history. We still continue to murder babies to this day,
Right.
and we pray that that everyone would come to the knowledge and wisdom of God and Jesus Christ, and understand how precious life is,
Yeah.
and that there are remedies, that
Yes.
if you have a mindset of life, because that's the intersection that we're at in this culture. It's either life or it's death. There's nothing in between. And so if
Yeah.
you're thinking of
Right.
life, then you come up with solutions that promote life, like abortion, like these pregnancy care centers that are opening up. Christy, I don't know if you know this, but we've got pregnancy care centers that are working with women and fathers, future fathers that
Right.
suddenly, "Oh, I'm a dad," and and all the complications of that, and they're coming alongside and helping them. Uh,
Yes.
you know, and you have more of those opening up than Planned Parenthood centers.
Well, I
So
think
that
yeah,
should
I
give
think
you hope, right?
you see a generation that has lived the consequences of abortion.
Yes.
So when you actually live it, it's hard to lie to you about what the consequences are because you've lived it. And
Mhm.
so when you've lived it and you've experienced the pain and the repercussions of that decision, not having realized what you were going to face if you did this, and then you
Exactly.
live a life that is affected by it, and that's happened to a whole generation or 2 now.
Mhm.
Uh, you can't snow them anymore.
Right.
They know it. They know what actually happened to them, and so then they start looking for answers and for healing.
Mhm.
And so that's why you see so many of them popping up, because there is a generation who knows the
Mhm.
truth now
Right.
personally,
Right.
and they are going to not only look for the truth, but they're going, once they find it, they're going to share it with others. And
Well,
that's
and
why there's so many
mhm.
ministries that are post-abortion, for fathers and mothers. There's healing out there. Why?
Mhm.
Because there's people that have lived it and they found the truth and now they want to share it with others.
Well, and this is what caused the Dobbs decision. It was organic. 49 years of experience of death, buying into the lie, and a mother's,
Yes.
who bought into this idea that was going to be safe and rare, found out otherwise. They found out
Yeah.
that it wasn't just a tumor, that it is a
Right.
baby, and call it a fetus and call it whatever you want, some nondescript name that
Yeah.
justifies your decision to to kill your child, to murder your child. And the realization, as you said, for women, and what they started doing was telling their story and saying, I regret it.
Yes.
The grandparents regret it. My husband, we're brokenhearted over it. And I keep telling people anecdotally, oftentimes when we get into this conversation and I'm talking with women, even men who have experienced abortion, Christy, they will tell me, "Oh, my child would have been
Yes.
7 today, or my child would have been 14." I mean, do you keep count of a nondescript tumor in terms of age? You say, "Oh, well, my tumor would have been 7 years
No.
old today." No.
Right.
Yeah, I mean,
No.
and you
No.
wouldn't cry over some tumor that's been exorcised out of your body, you know?
Right.
But
Yeah.
women are heartbroken, and my heart aches, and even for men, and I think it's to God's grace and mercy that even men are waking up and realizing, my God, I killed my child. And I tell this story that I was interviewing a director. He was a film director, and he was doing a movie on Roe v. Wade, and I was relating to him just as I'm relating to you and talking about how women will say to me that their child would have been a certain age. And
Right.
I was looking at my notes, and he was sitting right across from me. We were at a convention, and when I looked up, I saw tears coming down his face. And he said, "Bill, my son," he says, "my son would have been 18." And it
Mm.
crushed me. It crushed me uh, to experience the pain
Yeah.
that he was going
And
through.
it's like you said, it's in the church just as much as it is anywhere else.
Right.
People of faith really, and there were different reasons for it, whether it was fear, that the young lady decided to have an abortion because she didn't want to tell her family, or whether it was just believing the lies. Whatever it was, there was
Mhm.
a great cloud of darkness that was placed on our country with that decision. And I truly believe that, at that time of the decision, I don't think the church was prepared with scientific answers, much less answers of
Mhm.
faith.
Right.
Uh, and we are so blessed to have so much scientific advancement in
Mhm.
prenatal care and, preborn care. I mean, they're doing surgeries on children still in the womb. So, I mean, we
Exactly.
know so much more now. And,
Mhm.
my dad used to say, "You're only responsible for what you know, but you are responsible for what you know. So you better do something good with it." And once
Exactly.
we know something, then we
Mhm.
have the responsibility and the duty as people of faith and Christians and believers in America to actually be armed with the truth and speak out
Mhm.
about even issues like this. It's
Right.
extremely important in order to save lives.
Well, when I look back at church history, Christy, back in the 30s, there were voices warning. I mean, first it was
Yes.
about birth control, and
Yes.
and they took exception to it. Says, look, we're going to go down a slippery slide here. This is going to
Mhm.
lead to infanticide. Oh no, no, they were canceled, and all the pressure against them and everything. And the very thing they warned us about is what's been realized. And so you're exactly right. With today, we have
Mm.
little excuse with all the medical advancement and what we know now. With sonograms, you see the child, growing in a mother's womb, and
Yeah.
you see the heartbeat, and it's just for those of us with faith, we look at that and we just magnify God because it is such a miracle, isn't it?
Beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful. I'm so thankful for the organizations that are out there trying to provide, ultrasound machines and
Mhm.
sonograms and just information to people, because once a mother sees that on the screen, it is almost impossible for her to just walk away and not be changed in some
Mhm.
way. So it definitely is. I think, we have become bolder on this issue.
Mhm.
We have had to do a long, hard look in the mirror when it comes to, do we understand this, and why weren't we prepared, and what can we arm ourselves with now? And
Exactly.
I've been part of several pro-life groups trying to just raise awareness of the facts,
Mhm.
regarding life and the effects that an abortion has on someone, and the lives that are being taken. I mean, all of that. It's taken a long time. It's taken 50 years
Yeah,
to actually
exactly.
kind of get our bearings and
Mhm.
be able to have a change in the culture, to actually affect the culture
Mhm.
with what we have found and what we have discovered. And boy, what a blessing to have scientific advancement on our side as well.
Well, Christy, we have to be able to verbalize a consistent, compassionate message about abortion
Yes.
because the left has hijacked it. They're using it as an emotional, political wedge issue to get
Yes.
their way in much the same way as we talked early on, right? I mean, you may not be able to, convince
Yes.
people, but you can force people into thinking a certain way. And this is where the truth of God needs to be magnified and brought out in such a way that in love, with compassion, we address this issue that is now
Yes.
back with the states, and it's up to the states individually to make a decision. Because this
Yes.
recent election, I'm still scratching my head in Ohio. I don't understand how a predominantly mostly red state could come up with the decision that they came with.
Well,
And
yeah,
go ahead.
we definitely have work to do. A lot of people think that once Roe v. Wade was overturned, we're done, right? We won.
No.
No, no, the fight still continues, and the other side will never give up. It is one of their tenets of their faith, is how I like to describe it.
Yes.
They will not let go of that
Mhm.
doctrine of humanism, because without that, all of a sudden you humanize an unborn child, and they cannot allow that. And
Mhm.
so we have to be careful too that on our side, we don't think, first of all, that it's over. And second of all, we cannot come in guns blazing and look at the people that have actually been in the pro-life movement and the fight. And I know some who've been there since 1973, who were
Right.
part of that initial pushback and have been fighting ever since. We can't come in and say, you didn't do enough. We're going to end it
Oh,
now. And this is how we're going to do it. Because guess what? I don't think the fight will ever be over. We have to continually be vigilant. And that's what the founders said. The price of freedom is eternal vigilance. The price of life is eternal vigilance. We can't stop.
you have 350 million people here in America, 350 million choices to be
Yes.
made, 350 million hearts to be
To be reached.
changed and
Yes.
brought into alignment with our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, and what will truly, because all this whole situation in terms of the political sphere that we're talking about, and what God gave us. God, the ultimate gift that God gave us was liberty, was freedom. And here America has been
Yeah.
the manifestation of said liberties and freedom. And we're losing those,
Yeah.
step by step, as you unpacked. And you said, here it is. You've had this socialistic movement that has
Right.
come in and has invaded every aspect, every institution, our families. And we've got to see it for what it is and cast it out, don't we? I mean, it's our choice. We're
It's
still in that position, aren't we?
It's a lot of work. It is a lot of work. Vigilance isn't fun. I mean, vigilance means every day listening to what your children are learning, every day researching, whether it's the curriculums. In fact, I had an experience with my son in high school, actually
Mm,
in college as well,
right.
but bringing home reading material that was not okay. And this was an assignment, and having a back and forth with the teacher. That took extra time out of my schedule as a small business owner, and had
Right.
deadlines to meet and things to do. Why was I taking that time? Because it matters to me what my child is taught and the principles he's being indoctrinated with in school. And I have to be the buffer zone. I have to be the
Right.
person, because God gave him to me as my
Mhm.
child. It's my responsibility to make sure that he is given the truth, and he's given a free and open debate, and so that the truth can win out. Because when you have a fair playing field, and you're not, like, as a teacher, coming in and intimidating children into believing what you believe personally, you have to create an open dialogue, and especially with your children in your home, and say, okay,
Exactly.
tell me why you think that. And then you have to be prepared with the answers, and you have
Right.
to know where to point them to in order to combat anything that they are, hearing and believing that might be false.
Christy, you touched on something that's so significant, and that is that, our responsibility as parents, from the moment of conception all the way through, our generation has been quite spoiled and entitled. We've taken so much for granted, and
Yes.
we've thought that we could put our heels up on the desk and,
Yeah.
be very casual about this. But
Hmm.
again, part of our birthright is the vigilance that you talk about, the
Yeah.
way we honor this birthright that God has given us, the responsibility of raising our children in a godly manner. I mean, God was so serious about this that even in the Old Testament, when you read, I mean, he admonished those. He said, look at, you need to talk to your children, when you sleep, when you wake up, when you're
Yes.
walking, together. This is how important this is, that they're most important. And, we've all made that mistake to think that, well, our business and the urgency of business issues took precedent over our families. And,
Right.
we've fallen into that. But that doesn't mean just because we've fallen into it that we need to stay there, right?
Right, exactly. No, and we do have the capability to wake up and decide we're not going to be lazy today. We're going to be
Right.
proactive with our children, with our community, with our neighbors, with our church. We have that individual decision to make, and
Mhm.
I believe, when Abraham prayed for a remnant. So if there's a remnant, Lord, then will you spare the city? I think we need to be on our knees asking God to allow us to enlarge our remnant,
Amen.
and to allow the remnant to be actively involved and to be aware, and to be speaking out boldly, with kindness and with love, but with confidence, that we have
Exactly.
the answers.
Well, and it starts with how we think. And I've been saying here recently, Christy, I just believe that the Spirit has brought this into my orbit and says, we must think better, we must do better, we must be
Yes.
better. And
Yeah.
that doesn't say, look at, I want you to be 100% more, just be a little bit better.
Yeah. It
That
might
that
take
that
some personal sacrifice, I mean, it
right.
is a personal sacrifice to, take time out of your busy schedule to donate to a cause, or to roll up your sleeves and be a part of a board, that's
Mhm.
making a difference. It all is a sacrifice, but when you think about the sacrifices that have been made,
Yeah.
by others for us, it's really nothing, compared to,
Mhm.
what other generations have had to live through, compared to what Christ did on the cross. And so we've been asked to do so little. I think that it's time for us to realize that it might take some bigger sacrifices on our part,
Mhm.
to actually turn this thing around. And it's not going to turn around overnight. One thing that
No.
I learned serving in office and also watching my husband serve is that, um, government works slowly. It was never meant to be a pretty, process. The process is kind of ugly because
Mhm.
human nature is at play, and everybody has a different perspective, and we're supposed to have an open dialogue about different issues. It's going to get ugly. At the
Mhm.
same time, we cannot be so used to, well, in our business, we're going to make this decision, and so we're going to fix this problem. It's totally different in government. You have to work with others, and you
Mhm.
have to win them to your side. And
Exactly.
so, it's going to take patience on our part, I think, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
We need patience, to
Mm.
it was patience on the part of the cultural Marxist that targeted America. This has taken
Exactly.
close
It
to
was a
100
slow
years to
slow
get to this
walk through
point where
the
we're seeing
institutions, they
spiritual.
said. Yeah, exactly. Right.
Yes,
Well
yes.
well,
And so it's
well,
going to take a
Christy,
long time for us to push back.
and I'm gonna leave our audience, with what you said earlier, and that is, we must be valiant for the truth. And
Yes.
this must be absolutely foundational. We can stand on the truth, and there is absolute truth.
Yes.
Do not buy into that narrative that it is relative. That's a lie instantly. Uh, Christy Stutzman, thank you so much for the time. Congratulations on the book, which is available at all the usual places. The Spiritual Price of Political Silence. Again, we appreciate the time. You take care.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Our gratitude and thanks to Christy Stutzman for being on the show today. And thank you for sharing a part of your day with us. May God bless you and keep you. May he make his face shine upon you and be gracious unto you and give you his peace. Thanks again for being with us. God bless and happy Thanksgiving.